All right, everyone, let's get this show on the road and we can start. Other people are going to come in during the presentation, no doubt, but we'll just let them get admitted in by my colleague, Simon Harris. So thank you very much, everyone, for making the time. I know it's 6 o'clock. Some of you, your kids probably still aren't asleep yet. You just did dinner, etc. I totally get it. So just relax. Hopefully you'll get a lot of education out of what we're doing, but we are recording the presentation as well. So you will get a copy of this later. I'm sure like many of you, it's been a bit challenging lately with all lockdowns and coronavirus. You're probably sharing a workspace with your partner. You're trying to homeschool your children. You're realizing that teachers don't get paid enough to deal with them on a regular basis. My name's Jay Pace. I'm the director of Providence Property Group, and we hope to have the opportunity to work with each and every one of you going forward. So today's all about adding value to each and every one of you. We usually conduct these events face-to-face, but today we're coming to you live from my home office. So please excuse us if we have any technical difficulties when I pass over to Simon Harris, the other speaker, but I'm with Telstra Broadband, so hopefully that makes you all realise that nothing is probably going to go wrong with my internet. So a bit about us. As buyers agents, we act for property buyers with 15 years business experience. We've bought over 2,500 properties for clients. We typically buy about 20 to 25 properties per month, so we're pretty active. We buy both residential and commercial. We buy owner-occupier homes and investment properties for our clients as well. We have a team of buyers agents in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth. Many know us as probably one of the most trusted and referred buyers agents in the country, and that's because we've got a very good corporate benefits network with companies like PepsiCo, Nestle, PwC, International Convention Centre, etc. This pitch you can see here is actually from a presentation that we did, obviously pre-COVID. There is not a one squeeze bottle of hand sanitizer in sight in this photo, so it's from ancient times now, and this was pre-COVID. This was with ANZ Bank, so really at the end of the day, this isn't our first rodeo, so you're in some good hands. Okay, let's get started. It would probably be fair to say that most Australians hold the majority of their wealth in their property portfolios. Now, don't worry if this is not you, if you haven't bought property yet or you've got no exposure to it yet. What I would like you to do for the next few slides, though, is focus on property as an investment rather than just something you live in. So before we can explore effective strategies to improve your financial well-being and maximize your wealth, there's some crucial obstacles that we need to understand which stop the majority of Australians from improving their wealth position. Australia is definitely one of the highest paying tax nations in the world. Our top tax rate is funded by people earning more than $180,000 a year, and it's 45% of that income, plus 2% Medicare levy. So about $180,000 income tax is roughly half. In fact, if you actually take into account consumption taxes like GST, it's more than that. In 2019, Australians had an annual tax burden of over $500 billion. So Australia is currently ranked 7th place as in the highest tax-paying nations of the world. So Tax Freedom Day, it's the date of the year that represents how many days we work for the taxman before we earn for ourselves. Everybody should know their own personal tax freedom day. This isn't something, though, we get taught in school, which is very frustrating, or university, but this is something that's so important for you to understand. It represents total taxes collected by all 3 levels of government. So that's council, state, and federal. And it also includes indirect taxes like GST. And there's a lot more hidden taxes than you would actually realise on things like alcohol, tobacco, clothing, footwear, customs, luxury car taxes, etc. According to figures actually put out by Deloitte Access Economics, the average taxpayer ends up paying about 2/3 more tax than they pay through their income tax. So according to the Centre for Independent Studies, the results over the last 50 years show that Australians are paying off their tax debt later in the year. And you can see in 2018 that you had to work until May 9th to pay all your taxes. And in 2019, the most up-to-date data we have is tax freedom day was the 13th of May. So if you notice, there's a bit of a change there, 4 extra days from the 18th to the 19th. Now, we're not showing the information for 2020 because there were a lot of handouts, obviously, given by the government, a lot of incentives for tax, etc. So we're just kind of rolling with the original tax freedom day numbers. So if we want to see how Aussies compare to the rest of the world, in the US, it's the 24th of April is their tax freedom day for the majority of Americans. The UK, the 8th of May, about the same as us. France, the 29th of July. Belgium, the 6th of August. And most other European Union countries, it's early June on average. Understanding tax freedom day, it's very important because taxes are your biggest expense. And the wealthy reduce tax and convert tax into wealth accumulation. So this is an important part of the benefit that you would enjoy as a property investor. And some of you have probably already understood some of this because you've already purchased investment properties. You've spoken to your accountant. You understand what depreciation is and what those tax credits are and how they work. Those of you that haven't experienced this yet, don't stress about that. We're going to take you through it and help you understand more of it. So it's important that you become part of the group that converts tax into personal wealth accumulation instead of the one that just keeps paying it. So now that you know what tax freedom day is, let's understand mortgage freedom day. And most Australians are paying a mortgage on their own home. And if you're paying a mortgage as well, then you're spending most of the year working to pay taxes and then working to pay the bank. So how much of the year exactly? Well, let's find out. So according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the average Australian household spends 3 months of the year working to pay their mortgage. In 2017, the ABS reported that 25.1% of household income was used for mortgage repayments. 25% is a quarter of the year. So you can see that in the red circle in the bottom right-hand corner of the chart there. This means that most of us pay from January to the end of March. All of that pay goes onto the mortgage. So let's combine tax freedom day and mortgage freedom day to get a good understanding as to, well, when do I make money for myself where I'm not paying it to the ATO and I'm not paying it to the bank? So you work until the 13th of May to earn the money required to pay your tax for the year. You work another 3 months to pay off your mortgage obligation. So that means you're working until the 13th of August to pay your taxes and your mortgage. So you start paying yourself in the second week of August, which is week 32 of 52. So around 62% of the year has passed before any money is made that's going to be yours. Now, on a weekly basis, this is what it looks like. You start earning for yourself on Thursday morning. So Monday and Tuesday, you work to pay your taxes. Wednesdays for the bank. Thursday and Friday are for you. This is the current plan for most people, and they don't even know it, which is the scarier thing. Is it any wonder that most people's financial situations are not improving? So when we buy investment properties for clients, we look to address these issues and dramatically improve that situation. So the sooner and the earlier that you start, the better off that you actually end up. And I don't have time to go through exactly how we do it in today's presentation. That would go for at least an hour, but there are multiple videos on our YouTube page, and we will discuss this with you individually. So now that we're going from tax freedom and mortgage freedom, we're going to move a little bit forward now, and we're going to talk about how increased technologies are changing the longevity, longevity changes are affecting retirement and the implications of property investment. So retiring early and enjoying life is obviously an Australian dream. I would argue it's a dream for everyone all over the planet. But however, research specifically in Australia is showing that we're retiring later and we're retiring poorer. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics recently put out a report showing that the percentage of people working over the age of 65 has tripled since 1990. So it's up from 5% to 15%. And the reason why this is occurring is largely because of a significant increase in the group of Australians that can no longer afford to retire. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 3 most significant threats to financially comfortable retirement and how you can beat those odds. So according to the Australian Government National Commission of Audit, and you can look up this report, the name's right there for 2014. They've said that in spite of all of our savings into government super, projections are shown that 80% of Australians are still going to require pension over the next 40 years. It's a lot of people. The first significant threat to a comfortable retirement is not enough savings or super in retirement. So the Superannuation Guarantee, for a lot of you that may not know, was introduced to Australia in 1992 to address Australia's retirement income dilemma. And the government's own data shows that the reality of retirement in Australia is that only 20% of people will not require either at least a full or some type of pension. So the truth is that we all have super, but for most of us, it's just still not enough to retire comfortably. And as a result of this, the percentage of young people making up the Australian population is decreasing almost every year. So in 1973, young people aged 19 to 26 made up about 25% of the Australian population. In 2013, that dropped to 19% of people. And then it's projected that by 2053, the number is going to fall to 16%. Now, you might ask, well, what does this mean? This results in a declining workforce ratio. And this chart kind of illustrates it for you. The ratio of workers to pensioners is dropping fast. At the moment, there's around 4.5 workers for every 1 retiree. In 1975, this number used to be 7.5 workers for every 1 retiree. In 2055, this will be less than half the current number. So 2.7 workers for every 1 retiree. So this decline in the number of young workers disrupts the balance of having more younger workers paying taxes, which those taxes are then taken and used to financially support the elderly. So if your plan is to rely on the pension, my question to you is, where will the government get the money with half the workers paying tax? Quite simply, pensions cannot afford to stay at their current rate. The country can't afford it, so pensions will have to be cut. Now, it's not all bad news, but we must understand the problem before we can actually spearhead it and fix it, before we can deliver a solution. Now, the third significant threat to a comfortable retirement is increased life expectancy. And a lot of people are going to think, well, that's great, people are living longer. But there are some negative effects to that. Australians are living longer. We need more savings to fund longer lives. And this graph shows male life expectancy for selected countries. In Australia, life expectancy at birth in 1987 was 76 years old, whereas today it's 81. So today it's 85 for females, and in 2053, it's projected to be 90 years old. So as a result of living longer, our quality of life or of health is much lower. And that the need for more frequent and complex medical care means that as we get older, our costs of living increases. So now when you consider those 3 major factors, not enough savings, declining workforce ratio, and increased life expectancy, if you plan to rely on the pension, as I said before, where will the government get that money? So you need to make sure that you are self-sufficient in retirement, and you need to be planning that now, not tomorrow, now. So to look at it in a slightly different way, along with these elements, the projected cost of healthcare will increase over 77%. And the cost of the age pension is going to rise by 44%. And aged care is also expected to rise by 125%. So these are all very important elements to think about when it comes to your savings and your investments. Now, importantly, what we see is in the current, pension is not sustainable into the future. Okay. By 2050, the current age pension costs will increase by 50% as a percentage of our gross domestic product, our GDP. There's no money tree in Canberra, no matter what side of the fence you sit on. Ultimately, government expenses must be funded from tax revenue, and the pension will have to reduce because there's just no money to pay for it. So the cost of healthcare is going to increase by 77% by 2050. The cost of age pension is going to rise by 44%. Aged care is also expected to rise by 125%. So it might surprise you to know that a recent report by Statista showed that Australia, compared to our other developed countries and peers, has one of the highest rates of relative income to poverty for people at the age of 65. So this is really alarming because that's at a rate of 35.5% of relative income poverty. And that is over 1/3 of people aged 65, over 65. So we are second last on the chart, 14 out of 15. So that needs to improve. Listen, we're very big supporters of superannuation. Telstra have a great superannuation program, and we strongly encourage you to participate in that. The benefits are fantastic. But for a comfortable retirement, super is just not enough. You can't rely on just one thing. In addition to saving in super, the right kind of property investment will make a massive improvement to your situation. So by investing in real estate, the right way, we help our clients create their own tax freedom day ecosystem. And what this means is because property is tax advantaged, you can use it to convert tax into wealth creation savings. And the result being that tax freedom is brought forward. So earlier into the year, so that date in May, we want it closer to January, as close as we can. And it's the same with Mortgage Freedom Day. By investing in the right property asset, we will help our clients use the value growth in the investment property to pay off their mortgage in half the time or less. This brings Mortgage Freedom Day earlier in the year for them too. I mean, who wouldn't want that? So if you'd like us to show you how we can do this for you, please contact us. Now, before I pass you over to Simon Harris, who is one of our founding directors and head of research, brilliant man, really great sense of the market and on the pulse, a lot of personal experience with property himself over decades. Before I pass you over to Simon, I wanted to inform you that this is our fourth presentation with Telstra. We've been blown away by the feedback, by the participation. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. But there's so many of you. You've got such a big community. Anybody that's registered for this presentation, you will get follow-up emails and information. But if you want to speak to us, you have to be the proactive one and reach out to us because there's just too many of you for us to be following up. So if you are interested, if you would like to learn more about property, get an understanding about your personal circumstances and how we might be able to help you, or just have a chat about the market, you're going to need to fill out a form. So I wanted to let you know that you're all going to be sent, if you haven't received it already, the text message, and it contains a link that will take you through to our investment readiness calculator. And this is basically a sequence of 9 multiple choice questions that will assess your circumstances and will let you know if you're in the right position to potentially take some action or maybe some other steps that you need to take. So I want you to speak with us. And if you want to speak with us, please fill this out because those people that fill out this form will automatically be prioritized in our list of people to call back. Okay, so listen, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pass you over now to Simon Harris, and he's going to continue the presentation and go through everything. So just give us a second while we just kind of swap it all over there.
Thank you, Jay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, mate.
It's all working? All right.
Yep.
Okay, so look, what I wanted to take you through now is a little bit about some of the major elements about how we work as buyer's agents and really what to think about when negotiating your next property like a buyer's agent and paying the lowest possible price. So let's just jump straight in. So one of the most important elements in negotiating a property is getting the agent to substantiate their price. How did they arrive at their asking price or price guide? What recent comparable sales did they use? When I say recent, in fast-moving markets like the markets we're in at the moment, these have to be comparable sales that are no longer than 2 to 4 weeks old, and preferably only 1 to 2 weeks. What's the quoted range they've used on the agency agreement? Get very clear with yourself on the logical basis for their asking price or asking range. And really ask yourself, is their logic flawed or is it reasonable? When you submit an offer, provide an explanation for your offer. And I'll give you an example. Your first offer might be based on the lowest recent comparable sale of a property in the area, less an amount of, let's say, $20,000. And you then justify that discount based on the defects in the property that you're buying. So if you get to the stage of making counter offers, you can validate these counter offers in the same way. And this will give you negotiation more credibility and more force. It affects the seller's expectations about what you're prepared to pay, and this will soften their response when they make a counter offer. So you can use this to create doubt about the value that they've placed on the property to your advantage. Needs. Now, this is very, very powerful, and do not underestimate it. As much as you can, you need to learn about the seller, what their situation is and what their needs are. And this is a very important part of the work that we do, because by negotiating to fulfill everyone's needs, you've actually got a far greater chance of success. So does the seller need to stay in the property longer? Well, then you could negotiate a sale and lease back. Do they need money sooner to complete another purchase, and would a faster settlement suit them, or would an early release deposit suit them? We get so many deals across the line in a more favourable way by really getting to the bottom of the needs of the seller. We recently negotiated on a development site where the owner was an elderly lady, and after spending some time really finding out about her and her needs, we worked out that she wanted to downsize and she wanted a completely new 4-bedroom single level home. So low maintenance, no multiple levels, no stairs. So we went out and we facilitated getting her what she needed, meeting her needs. And that was a small price to pay to make the deal happen for our client. So we did it. We bought the site for our client, got a happy client, and that was all from understanding the needs of the seller and helping the seller meet their needs. I think something else that's very important that we find is that agents operate on the principle that yes is less. And what this means is that the less conditions and the less complicated the offer, the greater the chance the agent sees that they have of getting a yes from the seller. But you should not work on the same principle, and we certainly don't here. So as a buyer, a simple offer to buy a property on 10% deposit, settlement in 45 days unconditional, that'll work against you, as the only thing you can negotiate over is the price. So use conditions where possible to shift the goalposts to negotiation, making it less price focused, and make your offer subject to a range of conditions. And there's a whole host of these. It could be subject to finance, subject to valuation, subject to pest and building inspection, could have a longer or shorter settlement, a bigger or smaller deposit, differences in the inclusions. Is there anything that the sellers want to keep that doesn't mean much to you? So you'd be happy to effectively let them hold on to that. It might mean something to them. Do you want to buy some of their furniture too, because it solves an issue for you in that particular room? So all of those conditions, they can be tied in with the understanding of the needs of the vendor, like we talked about in the last slide, and structuring something that helps them. So by focusing on conditions, it just gives you a lot more to negotiate with and focuses the client's discussion away from price. And we've used this over and over to get agreements that favour our clients, including deals at much reduced prices. Now, you need to clearly understand the market you're in, and we'll be telling you more later about how to really get to the bottom of that and work that out for yourself. And you need to do that so you can negotiate harder when you're in a softer market, because when you're in a hotter market, you'll have to make stronger offers and you'll have to move a lot faster. So we're currently in a seller's market. Days on market is short, auction clearance rates are high. And in markets like these, it's a lot more challenging to get cute about pricing. Good properties move fast. They go to buyers agents and buyers who are available to do the deal. And deals can go down in the middle of the day when you and your partner are at work, or in the middle of the night. Deals really do have a life of their own. Money never sleeps. So if you're looking for bargains or trying to buy cheap in a boom market, you're going to waste a lot of time. You'll most likely have to go harder for the property than you would like to. But how many times have you heard someone say, look, in hindsight, I should have purchased that property back then? So go in hard and fast in a hot market. Don't risk losing out by making lowball offers. It wastes time and it gives rival buyers time to swoop. And most important, get the property signed up and formally off the market as quickly as possible to avoid getting gazumped. When you're negotiating, give to get. Always get something in return. Don't make a concession in the negotiations without getting a concession in return. And it's important to create space for objectivity between you and the agent. Sales agents are typically very highly socially calibrated because they deal with sellers and buyers all day. The good ones are really outstanding scientists of human behavior and human emotion, and they're very good at reading and manipulating buyers and extracting everything they can from you. So put someone you trust between you and the agent. This creates distance, objectivity, it removes emotional reactions and responses, and it anonymizes your communications with the vendor. They'll know nothing about you. And use someone you trust in these situations, preferably a professional. Being deal ready is critical. Get your finances sorted and arrange easy access to your deposit before negotiating. It means that you can unconditionally exchange super fast, which is a very powerful tactic when buying a highly attractive piece of real estate. Now, it's important to have a stalking horse. It's important to communicate to the agent that you have other properties you're considering, that this is not your one and only special property, even if it is. If they ever ask what other properties you're looking at or you're interested in, you can always bluff telling them that it's an off-market property through another agent, so you can't share the agent or the property. So buying property is high stakes poker, and bluffing is simply part of the game. If the agent's serious with you, they'll pass that information on to the seller, and that creates the impression that you're not overly keen, and it helps level the playing field. So work hard in your search so you really do have real alternatives, so you can walk away from a negotiation, because the power to happily walk away is the best power that you can have. Now, there are so many more factors here to consider. We could do a few hours on this bit, but we've given you the major ones, so let's move on. What I want to take a look at now is the science of expanding your balance sheet and utilising leverage on quality assets to grow your wealth. And I'll talk about how this relates to you. So one of the most useful things you can do for your own wealth, and you may not have heard this before, is track your own net worth annually. And the best way to do that is by writing up your own balance sheet. And we're going to show you how and why. What we're going to do is look at an overly simplistic example of a couple's balance sheet to demonstrate to you how tracking this and expanding this can have a very powerful accelerating effect on your wealth. So this is Bill and Jane's balance sheet. Now look at the date and notice we're looking at their balance sheet more or less around now. We're at the 1st of July of 2021 on the sheet there. For simplicity's sake, the only asset they have is their home. So they've got no super, nothing else, no other assets. They own a $1 million home. And so you can see that the total value of the balance sheet at the bottom is $1 million. They've got a $250,000 loan, and they've got a personal net worth calculated as assets minus liabilities of $750,000. Now, if we look at their balance sheet 12 years later and we make some assumptions, it's now the year 2033. 12 years later, the house has grown at a compounded rate of 6% growth per year. Now, dwellings in Australia, according to CoreLogic, have grown at 6.5% per year for the last 25 years. And that's all dwellings. That's dwellings out in the middle of nowhere. That's apartments. So 6% is low. We know from our asset selection that we can do far better than that, but we've used a very, very conservative number for this example. So if something grows at 6% compound for 12 years, it doubles plus a little bit more. Now, we've calculated that it's only doubled to keep the numbers round for simplicity. So you can see 12 years down the road, their $1 million home from today is now worth $2 million. Now, we've assumed they've also paid nothing off their mortgage, just the interest as they went along, that they had an interest-only mortgage. And you can see that their balance sheet has grown to a value of $2 million at the bottom, and importantly, their personal net worth has grown to $1.75 million. Now, what I want to do is reconsider their first balance sheet all over again. It's 2021 again, same couple, same amount of personal equity, $750,000 that they had in the beginning. But this time they've got their home, plus they've got 2 investment properties. Their home and investment properties are all worth the same amount, $1 million. So you'll note that their personal equity is the same as the first example, $750,000. So they're no wealthier. So same couple, same personal net worth, but the size of their balance sheet is 3 times what it was. At the bottom, the size of their balance sheet is $3 million versus $1 million in the first example. Now let's take a look at where they end up. It's the year 2033 again, 12 years later. We've made the same assumptions that they pay off no debt, all their loans have been interest only. Now this is a very simplistic example, but it does demonstrate the point of being aware of your balance sheet. You'll see that their personal net worth has grown to 3.75 million in this example versus the first example where at the end of 12 years, their net worth had grown to 1.75 million. So importantly, if you take that $2 million and difference and divide it by 12, because it's been 12 years, those 2 additional assets, not their home, the 2 additional assets that they bought have delivered a value increase averaging $112,000 per year every year over that period. And imagine trying to save that income. It's almost impossible. So if you compare that to your annual income, you'll see this is extremely powerful. And remember as well that if you don't sell, that asset value increase is untaxed. And you can actually access the profit without paying tax through refinancing and through withdrawing that growth. So it's very, very important to regularly expand your balance sheet actively through buying quality assets. And an important factor as well is that when holding property for 12 years, the cash flow element is typically positive over that period because the property costs you some money to hold, roughly for the first 5 or 6 years. Then it reaches cash flow neutral as rents increase, and then it pays you back over the next 6 years what it costs you to hold in the first 6. So over the 12-year period, typically it's free to hold, or it even puts money in your pocket. Now, I want to introduce you to someone, and that's the man in the photo there. His name's Graham Hart, and I want to discuss now what can New Zealand's wealthiest man teach us about the importance of expanding our balance sheet. Now, it seems that today some people idolise the ultra rich, and we don't think that's the right thing to do. However, we can always learn things from very successful people, from their perspectives, from their worldview. So this is Graham Hart. He's New Zealand's wealthiest man. He's very reclusive. He almost never talks to the media, and most people have never heard of him. Now, Graham is a very interesting character. He left school at 16. He started his career as a mechanic and a tow truck driver. So how did a tow truck driver end up as New Zealand's wealthiest man? Well, how he's made his money is through borrowing tremendous amounts of money, buying businesses globally, improving them and selling them. So this article here is headlined Graham Hart, New Zealand's most indebted man. Now, he's someone who really understands the value of expanding your balance sheet because he has got an extremely large balance sheet. So this was from 2011, 10 years ago, and the article is about how one of his companies already has $13 billion in debt, plans to borrow another $5 billion to fund another purchase of a packaging company. And these numbers are 10 years ago numbers in US dollars. So 10 years ago, that's about $30 billion. And that's a lot of debt, but that's a man there that really understands the value of expanding his balance sheet with quality assets. So I mentioned Graham's very reclusive, never talks to the media. He gave an address to the University of Otago to its graduating business students a few years ago. It's up on YouTube. I encourage you to take a look at it. And in his address, what he said exactly to the young business students there was this. He said, be bold. That means buy as big as you can, borrow as much as you can, and then work the asset as hard as you can. Now you can see there too that during this recent pandemic, Graham Hart made $3.4 billion, and that was not in income, that was in asset value appreciation. Now, when we're examining extremes in life, it can be a very good way of demonstrating a point. And the point here is that Bill and Jane in the first example had a lazy portfolio. They were comfortable in the beginning. They were underinvested. We showed you how they could expand their balance sheet and what that result meant. Now, we've seen a very extreme example here with Graham, and we're certainly not suggesting that you get overgeared. That's bad too. And the banks will typically not let that happen anyway when you borrow from them. However, both Bill and Jane's portfolio and Graham Hart underscore the importance of actively expanding your balance sheet with quality assets. Now, when the world appears to be falling apart, it can be difficult to have the courage to expand your balance sheet. But I would remind you of the approach of the world's best investors. This man here, this is Mark Mobius. He's one of the world's great investors. He's managed over $50 billion in portfolios for Templeton, which is one of the world's largest fund managers, and he has plenty of experience in emerging markets. Now, emerging markets are countries that are developing, and typically they have a higher share of trouble and strife compared with developed countries. And what he says is absolutely true. He says this: the world belongs to optimists, not pessimists. The pessimists are only spectators. The optimists will win. And that has been our experience too. The optimists will win. And importantly, the pessimists really are only spectators. They end up sitting on the sidelines, doing very little. A few facts: over time, markets go up a lot more than they go down. They go up a lot longer than they go down. And I explained this last time we presented from our study of property cycles, which we've studied property cycles all over the world, going back even for hundreds of years. The property cycle typically lasts 18 to 19 years, where property markets go up for 14 years and down for 4 years. So you can see there's a lot more up years than down years. And we've seen how robust property has been and how well tested it is, both over the long term and over the short term with this recent pandemic. Now, this was a very good article that I'll send you as well. It's by Seth Godin, who's one of the great modern day thinkers, and he wrote this back in 2014. It's about how mischievous and negative the media are. And he says this, he says, it's clear that the world is safer than it's ever been. Even when the media are not actually causing unfortunate events, they're working to get us to believe that things are on the brink of disaster. People who are confident, happy and secure rarely stay glued to the news. Things are a lot better than they seem. And we've found this to be absolutely true. Now, when it comes to property, there's an absolutely overwhelming amount of data to look at and a whole range of regularly mentioned indicators in the media. So if you don't have a lot of time, which ones do I think you should rely on, pay attention to? Which ones do I think you should be thinking about? Firstly, it's worth understanding that some statistics are lagging indicators. They tell you what's happened in the past. Others are leading indicators. They're a sign of what's going on right now and what's coming ahead. And here's what I mean. The commonly quoted median house price, well, that's a lagging indicator. That's telling us what's already happened. That's really about property sales from 30, 60 or even 90 days ago. So today we're going to look at 3 of the most useful indicators if you're buying or even if you're just a keen market follower to tell you what's happening in the property market. Now, these 3 indicators tell you a lot about supply and demand, and they tell you about where the housing market is at and where it's going. So first of all, one of the most useful market trend indicators is days on market. And more importantly, the trend in days on market tells us where our property markets are heading And days on market is calculated by the average number of days that properties within a particular category, let's say apartments or houses, are advertised for sale. Now, we found the trend of days on market is a key indicator of whether we're in a buyer's or a seller's market and which way the market is shifting, as it serves as a marker of the relationship between supply and demand. Is the market getting hotter, cooler? Is it staying relatively the same? If the property market in a particular suburb is hot, properties will be bought very quickly by eager buyers and days on market will be low, often 30 days or less. And this is the chart you can see here for Greater Sydney from the SQM research website. And you can see that the chart there, the market is dominated by the blue lines, which are under 30 days. And that indicates a hot market where the demand for buying is outweighing the supply. Another great indicator for supply and demand is the auction clearance rate. And what is that? It's the percentage of auction properties that actually sell. Now, the higher the figure, the higher the demand. You can see here that in Sydney, auction clearance rates remain high, close to 70%, and you can see the trend and which way it's been moving in the chart. And this is very useful information to guide you as to what to expect when you're buying, who has the power, is it the sellers, is it the buyers? And once again, you can get this information at SQM's website for free. Now, the last factor I want to talk about is vendor discount. And what is that? It's the percentage of difference between the listing price and the actual sale price. So the higher the demand relative to the supply, the less a seller has to discount. So this is another great indicator of supply and demand. When the market's hot, sellers discount only small amounts from their asking prices or not at all. So right now, vendor discounting rates remain at record lows, meaning that most vendors aren't budging much on their initial pricing expectations. This data is available from CoreLogic, and so those are three of the best indicators that tell you where the market is right now, and depending on how those indicators are shifting week to week, where the market's going in the near term. And you can access that information for yourself at no cost. Now, we look at a whole range of other factors as well, but if you want to get a flavour at a high level for what's going on, that's a very, well, it is the best place to start. Now, what I wanted to cover was, if you're looking to buy a property, a home or investment property, we look at dozens, even hundreds of factors to consider. But if you could only look at or consider, say, 5 factors, let's call them the highest gain factors, what would be the most powerful 5, the ones that have a massive impact on the performance of a property over the long term and can account for the majority of the performance a property has? So let's jump in and take a look. So the first factor I alluded to before, it's really supply and demand. So we always advocate buying in locations where demand substantially outweighs supply. And this is why we favour bigger capital cities with a multitude of large-scale employment hubs, creating tens of thousands of jobs. And this in turn creates greater demand for housing, as most people want to live as close as reasonably possible to where they work to avoid long commutes. And this is why we favour the inner to middle ring suburbs of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth, buying properties with a significant amount of scarcity and uniqueness about them. And that's what we buy for clients when we buy homes and investments. And even in spite of some shifts recently in people working from home more frequently, we don't see this changing dramatically in the near term. The second, land to asset ratio. If you purchase the property for $1 million, what part of this property is rising in value? And it's largely the land. Understanding that it's the land that will be increasing in value most of all is really another critical fundamental, as it's not the size of the land under the house, but rather the value of that land that we look at. So it's important to understand that all types of properties have an intrinsic land value. And if the property we're looking at is a house, we'd want to know that the value of the land is really ideally 50 to 60% of the purchase price. Now, I know in Brisbane with $1 million purchase, for example, we'd want to make sure that the land value might even be a little bit higher than that, might be 55 or 60 or 65%. Now, it can be a little bit more tricky to apply this principle to units. However, you can imagine that a boutique complex of 6 or 12 apartments will have a greater land value attributable to each unit than a complex of 300. Now, when you're looking at any investments, I think we've all heard the phrase before, past performance is no indicator of future performance. And when it comes to property, that's really not entirely true. Good suburb historic growth over the last 15 or 20 years or longer actually does indicate something very, very important. It indicates that this suburb is attractive, it's desirable, its demand is higher than its supply over the long term, and people really want to live there. Now, there are exceptions. Suburbs can change their nature over time. They can become more desirable as a result of gentrification or other factors. But generally speaking, you want to buy in a suburb that's been desirable for quite some time. And the way you figure that out is, has it demonstrated a track record of that through strong historic price growth, preferably of 7% or more per year over many years, 15, 20, 25 years. The fourth high gain factor will be location amenity, buying in close proximity to employment generators, top schools, hospitals, universities, high quality shopping, lifestyle precincts, good walkability, public transport, leisure facilities like parks, lakes, beaches, that kind of thing. And the fifth high gain factor would be what I call the elements to avoid list. And what I mean by this is removing as many undesirable factors as possible. And there are many of these. I mean, ask yourself the question, what would you like to not live near? You want to avoid properties that are in close proximity to high voltage power lines, backing or fronting onto busy main roads, thoroughfares, childcare centres, commercial premises and train lines. They've got a bus stop right out the front. They might be on a hill where vehicles rev and gun their engines, close to traffic lights and intersections. They might have bad neighbours, e.g. close proximity to housing commission, high crime areas, removing all kinds of pollution and negative elements, noise and visual pollution, and then flaws in the property itself, irregularly shaped blocks of land, e.g., or for example, they're very wide at the front, tapering to narrow at the back, subject to flooding, that kind of thing. So we've got a very extensive do not buy list. And if you could consider just 5 factors in property selection, I think those would be the most important 5 that you should be considering. Now, I want to talk to you about fully optimizing your finance journey, because optimizing your finance is actually almost as important as your asset selection, because it really it is such a powerful lever over how you can expand your balance sheet, how actively and quickly you can accelerate that. So it's really an extremely important thing, and I'll take you through 4 of the most important elements now. So I'll talk about whether you should use a mortgage broker or go direct to a bank. In our years or experience, and I'll also talk a bit more about choosing the right broker. So in our years of experience, you're far better off going with a mortgage broker, and there's a range of reasons for that. First of all, there's no cost for it. It's no cheaper than if you go to the bank. Good brokers are absolutely worth their weight in gold. They'll really make life far easier for you, and they can get things done that you just couldn't do on your own. So banks can, but certainly not always, provide a good service. But in our experience and that of our clients, we prefer the objectivity, the independence, and the performance of a good broker. Now, very important, and this is really, really important, not all brokers are created equal. So how do you find an elite broker? First of all, we're not mortgage brokers ourselves. So we don't, sell broking services, but we are what we call broker advisors. And what I mean by that is, over 15 years, we've dealt with over 2,000 mortgage brokers. And choosing the best broker is not straightforward, but broking, like all disciplines, it's really a bell-shaped curve. There are some great ones at the top end of the curve, but most are in the middle, and there's a lot at the bottom as well. Most are not very good at all. So importantly as well, brokers tend to have niches of expertise, and they've got a lot more experience in some loans than others. So some specialise in first home buyers, non-residents, temporary residents, expats, bad credit, self-employed, low doc, no doc loans, construction loans, property investment, the list goes on. So of the more than 2,000 brokers we've worked with, we've rated and handpicked and selected a very small panel of the most outstanding brokers in the country, the absolute elite. So no brokers are experts across the board, and part of the work that we do is connect you with the broker who is the best fit for you. There's no cost for this. We simply find you the very best broker in the country for you. We help manage the process. We help support you going through the process, and we ensure that they really deliver for you. So we've got a fantastic list of brokers on our panel, and they can really make a tremendous difference to you in terms of how you borrow, what you can borrow, and how you can go about improving your balance sheet. Now, structuring your mortgage in the most optimum way is really, really important, and professional investors really understand how much of a difference it makes. It's huge. And here are some of the most important factors you need to think about or remember when structuring your mortgage. So first of all, and by the way, working with one of our brokers, these are all key elements that they focus on. So first of all, always borrow the maximum you can and use an offset. So when investing, you typically only have one opportunity to crystallise the maximum tax deductible loan in respect of a property. And that opportunity is when you first buy it. You can't contribute cash and borrow a low amount when you buy a property and then subsequently increase the loan later on. And the reason is you create loan tax deductibility issues. So second, you'll do yourself a great service to structure your finances to give you as much flexibility as possible. So borrow as much as you can and use an offset, and that means that you have the flexibility of money available for opportunities up to the most that you can borrow. And you have the benefit that you're not paying interest on the full drawdown because you've got money that you're not using, offsetting your mortgage, reducing your interest, and you have that money available anytime down the track. When investing, we always use interest-only loans. Any surplus you generate for loan reduction can be kept in the offset. And when investing, never contribute cash, use debt, protect your cash for buffers in your offset for a rainy day and for future investing. Minimise security, so be careful not to give the bank too much security. Try and keep your loan to value ratio at or around the 80% of the security's value, and this will allow you to get the lowest rate whilst not giving the bank any more security than they need. It's important to diversify lenders. Putting all your eggs in the one basket is not a good idea, including dealing with the banks. And there are many advantages with diversifying lenders, including, you don't want to let a lender know too much about you and therefore have too much control over your personal business and investments. Banks are good servants, bad masters, and it's possible to best maximise your borrowing capacity by using multiple lenders. Of course, it's still important to borrow within your limits, but it's a good idea to actually spread that around. I think banks are less likely to get lazy if they know that they don't have all of your business, keeps them on their toes, prevents them from becoming complacent. This is very important. Avoid cross-securitization. And what that means is cross-securitization is where any one loan uses more than one property as security. And we see clients occasionally, they come to us and they've done this. It's a big mistake. The simple example is where you have an investment loan secured by two properties. Typically, your home and the investment property. It's a bad structure, and the main reasons to avoid this is that it doesn't allow you to maximise your borrowable equity due to a lack of control over valuations, and it ties you to a particular lender, reducing your flexibility. It's really a bad idea. You must avoid it at all costs. And I think finally, never mix business with pleasure. So if any of you are self-employed contractors, your business and private banking with the one bank might seem convenient. However, we've seen situations where this hasn't worked out well for clients. The problem is the bank has too much control. They know too much. For example, if you have a dip in revenue for a few months and then you apply for a personal investment loan, they might start asking questions. So if you separate your business banking from your personal banking, you control the amount of information that each side has. Now, when it comes to loans and the lowest rates, rate is important, but only to a point. A word of warning with selecting the absolute lowest rate is that it often ends up costing you more money. Typically, people with large home loans and investors need to consider a range of factors, such as the speed of approvals, borrowing capacity criteria, lending policies, and the lender's ability to structure the loan effectively. So there's no point moving to a lender who's cheaper if they're not going to allow you to borrow to build wealth. And that doesn't mean you have to pay more for this. It simply means that selecting a lender that might offer you a rate of 0.05% lower might actually end up costing you in other ways. So what you want to aim for is fair pricing that's the lowest rate that a comparable lender will offer you for a comparable product. And of course, when you do compare, be sure to use the comparison rate. So how do you get the best loan? So first you need to determine which product and structure you need, and then consider which lender provides the best solution. So don't choose the lender and try to make their products work. Now, it seems like there are millions of different loan options, but in reality, it's actually choosing a loan is a lot simpler than it looks. Most borrowers only need to choose between 3 products: a basic variable loan, a discounted standard variable rate loan within a package, or a fixed rate product. So package products allow borrowers to establish multiple loan accounts, and they offer an interest rate discount based on the total borrowings. Packages are typically the most cost-effective products for investors, and they're typically what our clients use. Data shows that fixed rate borrowers have been financially worse off 69% of the time since the year 2000. So the odds are stacked against you if you're going to fix. Offset accounts are valuable for borrowers who have a home loan, as it allows them to reduce the amount of non-tax deductible interest they pay. And the Reserve Bank data demonstrates that banks offer new borrowers lower rates than existing customers. Therefore, it's important that you or your broker review your interest rates regularly, at least annually. And setting up your investment loan with interest-only repayments gives you the most flexibility. It sets the minimum repayment amount at the lowest level, and thereby it gives you discretion over what you do with your cash flow. So I want to talk now about how our most successful clients invest. We've identified a bunch of factors that see them continue to outperform. And some of these are directly related to investing, and some of these factors are actually more psychological and behavioural. So the first factor that separates successful investors from not so successful investors is they have a goal to expand their balance sheet actively, not passively, as frequently as possible. They review their balance sheets and their progress at least 1 to 2 times a year, and sometimes even quarterly. They don't have lazy portfolios, meaning they're not overgeared, but they buy quality appreciating assets as soon as they're in a position to do so, and the bank will lend them the money to. They're happy people, but they want progress, so you could call them happily dissatisfied. The next factor of our most successful clients is they apply an investment lens when selecting an owner-occupied home. And this is something we do all the time with our clients that come to us enlisting our help to help them buy an owner-occupied home. So this is part of the philosophy we have at Providence, where we want to help our clients get everything they can out of everything they have. And what this really means is maximising the return they get on every single asset available to them, because buying a home well and buying the right kind of home that's going to grow and appreciate as quickly as possible, and also with potential to improve it, that's going to improve your asset base, and that's going to therefore improve your ability to invest and to build wealth. So it's all interlinked. Now, our most successful clients, they only invest in investment grade property, and they focus on the fundamentals and the right data when buying. And think of that list of 5 factors we covered earlier: supply and demand, land to asset ratio, strong historical suburb performance, location amenity, and the issues to avoid list. Our most successful clients, they have a particular mindset, and you could describe it as strong and determined. It's characterized by no excuses. They realize that time is slipping away. They realize that compound growth time for any investment is very, very precious, and they want to maximize it. They don't want to waste their most valuable commodity, which is that compound growth time. So successful people, they don't procrastinate. They make a decision either way. They're either going to be investors this year or they're not. They don't dwell on it. They don't get spooked by the market. They don't get influenced by media or pandemics or what the government's doing, changes in negative gearing, whatever's going on, they move ahead. There are always changes. There's always things on the horizon. They make a decision and they just get it done. Now, another key factor is this: it's more a question of who rather than what. Now, what do I mean by that? When I say who, I mean who is the person that can help them with that decision, not what is the answer to their decision. It recognises that the best knowledge comes from experience, and you as individuals don't have the same experience as people like me and our team here as buyers agents. We've been helping investors and home buyers for the last 15 years, and that experience is what you lean on to help you make better quality decisions. Another key factor that separates successful investors from not so successful investors is this, and this is in fact one of the most important slides in the deck, so really pay attention to it. The most successful clients of ours across the board, and we've been doing this a long time, I'm 52 years old, and we've dealt with thousands of clients, is they utilise the three most important forms of leverage to increase their wealth. They utilise financial leverage, they utilise specialised knowledge leverage, so using the right specialised knowledge to achieve a result, and accountability for execution leverage. And what this means here is getting the finance and the asset selection and purchase done and done right. So they're incredible users of those three forms of leverage, and really that requires a specialist team. Our most successful clients, they're organised, they're 100% buying ready with their finance done and approved. They know what they can spend. They've got their finance and paperwork in order, and they're ready to go. It gives them confidence and negotiation leverage when buying, and they can act on something good straight away. Our most successful clients, they protect their investments from expected and unexpected risks. And one of the great benefits of property is that through careful property selection and safety measures like landlord insurance, which only costs about $350 a year, and keeping money in a buffer for a rainy day, you can really mitigate nearly all of the key risks. So it becomes a very safe investment. Now, I went back through the archives to find some of the properties we've bought for our active clients over the years. These were picked out randomly. I'll give you some examples to give you a flavour for what some of our active clients have bought. Now, we bought this for a client, for an investor in 2011. We paid $880,000 for it. Our client sold it in 2016 for $1.79 million. Now, they sold due to a change in their circumstances. You can see over that period, 2011 through to 2016, it actually made $160,000 a year in capital growth. So they got a tremendous return on it. It was on a quiet street, north-facing backyard, on a large block, 575 square metres. Now, if you're outside of Sydney, you might think that's not a very big block, but blocks tend to be smaller in Sydney than they do in Melbourne and Brisbane and Perth, for example. So that's a good sized block here. Significant room to extend at the rear, opportunity for a second level. And we all know what's happened to prices since 2016. So that's probably worth $2.5 million today. And we bought it for that client for $880K. So they did well out of selling it, even back in 2016 for $1.79 million. Now, we purchased this property at the bottom there, that older home, 50-year-old home, 569 square metres. That's in Sydney as well. It was on a large corner block. We bought that back in August 2013. And the reason we advised our client to buy that is the block had development and splitting potential, and the development potential was realised. We helped our client. They built 2 dwellings on that, cost about an extra $500,000. So all in, with stamp duty, everything else, the client was really up for about $1.4 million. So they knocked down the property, built 2 dwellings, combined value today of about $3.3 million. So you can see there's almost been $2 million in uplift for that client. And that's been a fantastic outcome for that client. They've gotten significant cash flow that they still enjoy today. And they've been able to redraw equity continually from that to continue to invest and buy more. Now, one thing about our most successful clients is they look past the aesthetics of the property to see its underlying strengths, because we buy a lot of great looking homes and investments, but many of the best investment properties we've bought are not necessarily that beautiful. And I think this is a good example. Here's one we bought for a client a few years ago, $615,000. It's on 950 square metres of subdividable land. It can easily be split, providing 2 475 square metre lots. It's a clear block, flat to the road. So in terms of redevelopment, it's a very, very easy redevelopment. It's not on a sloping block. The suburb has had fantastic growth, 8% plus, 4.5% rental yield currently. So it's putting money in their pocket. Low suburb vacancy, so high demand suburb, close to the CBD, close to the train, shopping, all that client kind of stuff. So it really ticked all the boxes, and a very, very happy client there. And plenty of upside to be realised in that block moving down the road. This was a purchase we made for a client in Perth. The client was actually moving back there. They bought the home, or we bought the home for them for $805,000. It's on over 1,000 square metres, good suburb. It's already got a second dwelling built on it. It's got a granny flat at the back, already tenanted, rental yield of 4.8%, cash flow positive. And they've got the ability to subdivide that block into 3. So one purchase, 3 blocks of land, very, very valuable parcel. The property was fully renovated, or the main residence was, close to the train, close to shops, 14 k's from the CBD, after tax cash flow positive, and out of the gate, and huge development potential. So a very happy client. This was an owner-occupier, because we do a lot of owner-occupied purchasing. It's a home we bought for a client in March this year. The client has a demanding family-run business. They play soccer on Saturdays. They've got no time. They really understand the value of outsourcing. They engaged us to run the whole purchase for them. So we took a detailed brief. We agreed on properties to inspect, including off-market properties. We took video of each property that we inspected. The client viewed the video every Saturday night from the comfort of their couch, and the client only inspected houses that they liked based on the videos that they saw. So we bought that house at auction within about 90 days of our engagement, so less than 3 months. We looked at 77 houses across 3 suburbs. We physically inspected 31. Out of the 31 properties, the client physically inspected 5, and we saved the client over 40 hours of physical inspection time, and over 15 hours of online searching and analysing. So a very, very happy homeowner there, and that was another great outcome for that client. And look, I suppose in terms of the key messages, summing up, overall what we've seen is that the most successful people with property utilise a professional team to help them get success faster and earlier. Buying a good piece of real estate, it's an intense, competitive battle, and having the right finance structure, that's a critical piece, and choosing the right broker to help you is super important too. And obviously, choosing the right asset is absolutely critical. So get professional help. For the Telstra team, we provide our first phone call and our first 60-minute consult at no cost. Let's open up the conversation about what's possible for you. And remember, we have genuinely discounted rates on all our fees for the Telstra team. So Jay mentioned earlier the investment readiness calculator. We've SMS'd you the link. We've had a lot of people register for the event, so we'll prioritise speaking with those who send us back the form. It'll only take you 60 seconds to fill out. So if you want to speak with us, or even if you're just a little bit curious and want to chat, fill out the form so we can help you. All of us have limited time. Life is short. Remember, the earlier you start, the more compound interest will work to your advantage. So don't procrastinate, get moving. Time is not on your side. Fill out the form so you can get your property progress accelerated. Thank you for joining us, and we really look forward to hearing from you personally. That's it for today, and bye for now.